Hi, thank you so much for joining us tonight with the League of Women Voters discussing redistricting with Representative Tammy Townley from District 38 out of Ardmore. She represents Ardmore, Garvin County, and Murray counties. My name is Stephanie Henson. I currently serve as the Vice President for the League of Women Voters of Oklahoma, and as well I serve as a member of my local league, which is the League of Women Voters of Oklahoma County. And I wanted to start tonight, before we get into talking redistricting, just to say thank you, thank you, thank you, and with gratitude for coming tonight. I know that there's a zillion different places that everybody could be tonight. And the idea that with so much going on right now in the world and it being such a hard time, the idea that everyone that's watching tonight feels passionate about coming to the table to have this discussion about fair maps in our state, to have this discussion about redistricting, and to come to the table together, working together in collaboration and in coalition with our Oklahoma Congress. Thank you, thank you, thank you to them. Thank you, thank you, thank you to Andy Moore and People Not Politicians, who've really been a driver for redistricting this past year. It's looked very different over the course of the year, and it's been a process. And the idea that as Oklahomans and as this Oklahoma standard coming together, working together in coalition, the League, People Not Politicians, and Congress people, all of us together, I just have a deep appreciation for that. And I thank all of you who are wanting to come to that table and learn more so that we can really make better maps and make better representative democracy in the state of Oklahoma. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Representative Townley, for being with us tonight. I want to thank you and let you know a little bit of who Representative Tammy Townley is. I mentioned that she resides in Ardmore, which is a place that I lived as well myself for 2 years, so feel near and dear. Love Ardmore. Taught at Dixon High School for a good while.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that.
Yes. And Representative Townley was elected to the Oklahoma House of Representatives in 2018 and began serving in 2019, where she has proven to be and desires to be a problem solver. She seeks solutions. She believes that solutions to the state budget crisis must be made through audits and efficiencies in state government. And she believes that our core services should be funded first. Those include schools, veterans services, roads, and highways. She's managed in Ardmore the local Experience Works program, which helps provide jobs for senior citizens. And she's volunteered for 13 years on Southern Workforce Board, helping to find solutions for community workforce needs. She's a graduate of Oklahoma State University with a degree in marketing, and she loves to travel, to read, and to sing. Thank you, Representative Townley, for being here tonight to help us to understand the importance of working together to create fairer maps.
Yes, and it's a big deal. I mean, wow. You know, you've always heard about redistricting and about the numbers and how important the census is. And then you start this process and you realize just how big of a process it is. So, I'm not quite sure exactly what all, I feel like that most of you probably have a fairly good grasp on exactly the whole process of redistricting. But the thing that I want to drive home that a lot of people fail to really get a hold of is that this is a numbers game first. And that's why the census is so important. It's a numbers game. We have to get our numbers right, and we have to get our numbers correct, and we have to get everyone counted so that whenever we start, you know, dividing out our population fairly and equitably, that we know how many, because we have to have 101 districts, right? 101 House districts, and House districts is what I'm in charge of for my South Central area. That's what I'm chairman of. You know, we have each of the districts, you know, sectioned off and quadrant off equitably among all of us. And every representative is sitting on a committee. So Republicans, Democrats, if we had independents, they would be on it too. Everyone is on a committee. Whatever district you sit on, you're on that committee. And so everyone is getting a voice, and that is an important process in Oklahoma. And I want to say 10 years ago when we had the census, and we had redistricting. Oklahoma had no problems whatsoever with our redistricting effort. We do a really good job here of redistricting and redistricting the correct way. We try to give everyone a voice. So whenever we do this, I mean, that's why it's so important to get our census numbers and why we did really good. 99.5 or 99.9 is what Oklahoma got in our census numbers. We did so well. And that's Oklahoma Department of Commerce numbers, by the way. I want to say it's 99.9, but don't quote me on that. It's on the ODOC, Oklahoma Department of Commerce website. We got a return rate on our census numbers. We did an outstanding job, Oklahoma. And so once we get those final numbers in, which they are not in yet, we'll divide out by 101 and we'll know how many we're going to have in each population district. And then of course we already know we've got, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say no less than 4 districts that are going to have to be redrawn considerably smaller because, and that's geographically smaller because they're so populous. You know, they've got 15,000 too many already. And that is a number that was an estimated number based off of like July population numbers. I mean, we already know that. So, you know, we're trying to already start, you know, looking at that, how that we're going to be mapping that. And we've got 2 or 3 places in Oklahoma City, I believe, that are falling into that pattern. So, I mean, this is a process. I mean, this is going to be a problem. And we are very conscientious of the fact that we've got communities here in the Oklahoma City area. And it's not so much a problem in our rural areas, but in like Oklahoma City, Tulsa areas, you know, we've got population centers where they've got culture that we absolutely cannot, and we don't want to, number one, let me back that up. We don't want to interrupt that culture, but by law, we cannot interrupt that culture. And so we're going to have, we want to be very conscientious of that and make sure that we can keep those neighborhoods intact. And so, you know, there's so much that goes into this redistricting and drawing the lines of all of this. And it's a big job. And I'm very honored to be a part of it. And of course, to be the South Central chairman, but there's going to be a lot to go into it. And I'm kind of anxious to get the final numbers and to get started with the final project.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Well, one of the questions that did just come in off of Facebook Live had to do with, you know, and historically, because I know you said at the very beginning that a lot of people watching might have an idea of how redistricting has worked. And you mentioned how it all happens every 10 years as a result of the census. However, assuming maybe that, and because our purpose is always to educate, in the event that there's folks working who aren't familiar with how that every 10 years, and also just historically speaking, somebody on Facebook Live asked about the gerrymandering, that one of the reasons that nationally we've been looking at our maps is because historically it wasn't fair. And even though we like to say people had a voice, the idea that this wasn't always true. So could you speak to that a little bit? Sort of why people
absolutely
feel a sense of injustice, I guess.
And I will tell you, and I will say you, here in Oklahoma, and when I talk about this, please know here in Oklahoma, we have not had this problem. So keep that in mind. We have not had this problem in Oklahoma. But in some of the other states, if they saw a large, because I'm a Republican, I'm going to use my party, just so you know. Say they had a large mass of, say, Democrat voters, and the Republican Party wanted to go in and break that up. So they would go in and divide that community and say, that's where gerrymandering comes in. That's what they're saying, the gerrymandering term. the people who were drawing that map would go in and divide that community, that culture, and say, we're going to put a district line right through there and divide up that culture. And so they would have like more of a population of Republicans and a very minute population of Democrats, that it would obviously diminish the Democrat voice. Well, we don't want that to happen. And say like I want to say it's District 99 here in Oklahoma City. It's predominantly a Democrat demographic. Well, we traditionally leave that population alone because that is a culture population. And we've already been told we're not, I mean, we will have to redraw that line because they've had a population increase because it's right downtown Oklahoma City. And as we all know, Oklahoma City has exploded in population because they're redoing buildings, they're redoing apartments, and people have moved there, tremendously. So we're going to have to redistrict those lines to some extent, but we will keep that population center intact because they are a culture. And that is something that we've already been told to just basically leave it alone. District 99 is predominantly Democrat. We're going to leave it alone. And that is accepted. And, we are not going to gerrymander it and put a line through it and break it up and put it into one of these more Republican centers that are around it, that surround it. That's one of those things that we will not mess with a culture base. And that is one of the directives that they give us whenever we go into this process. Another thing that I found interesting is whenever we are drawing lines, they have to be, you can't say, okay, I'm going to draw this on this county, but I'm going to reach over here and pull some from this little area over here because we want to make sure we get some more Republican voters over here to go with this Republican base over here. You can't do that. It has to be a contiguous line. You can't break it up. Does that make sense? Yes or no? Because like a river, like say a river goes through a county, but a bridge goes across that geographically, that bridge makes that area contiguous. I think I'm saying that word right. Contiguous, like contiguous United States. And that is something I thought was very, very interesting, that it all has to be connected. They can't, and that is that one of the things that they were trying to do away with gerrymandering, because people would do that. They would draw a little pocket over here and then go over here and get some population, but they were separate. And like this would be District 48 and this would be District 48, but they were not connected. So to do away with gerrymandering, they made the rule or the law that it has to be contiguous or continuous. So I thought that was very interesting. And I did not realize that. But that was another thing to do away with the gerrymandering. And they did have that very badly. And they had several lawsuits over in several other states. And they overturned their district lines because of it during the last census and the last redistricting effort in 3 different states. So I'm very thankful that Oklahoma was not one of them.
I appreciate one of the things I appreciate so much that you're saying is that idea that you too, as you've been a part of the legislature, you as well have felt a sense of the injustice of some of the past just unfair ways of taking that power of being in the position to where you are the legislators and you're able to draw your own lines, and that was the reason for folks coming out and saying we need an independent coalition that was even that, of course, what we were originally hoping for with the redistricting petition would be that we were taking the redistricting out of the hands of the legislature altogether, that was something that was going to be done so that it could be fair that way. But then, of course, when COVID happened, we've now come up with this plan B because we weren't able to collect signatures to move forward with the independent coalition at this time. And so it's nice to know that everybody's learning together, I think, and that everybody, as we look at the history together, we understand that we can do better than what we've done previously. And I love that, for example, some of the legislators that we were talking to in a prior educational meeting, they talked to us about how this is all a process and that perhaps in 10 years, we will be at that place where we have the independent coalition that's made up of a fair number of Democrats, Republicans, and independents. And that, the idea that it would eventually be that independent coalition is maybe the ideal. I love that what you're saying is that everybody is recognizing the injustice of the way the maps have been drawn previously.
Well, I think you may be carrying it a little too far because I think they've been done very fairly in the past. I think Oklahoma has done an excellent job. Now, in other states, I think that's gotten carried away, that they've not done quite as good of a job. And honestly, both parties have done their fair share of gerrymandering. But Oklahoma, I'm telling you, Oklahoma has really done a great job of being fair on both sides. We've done a great job.
One of the things, Tammy, I had thought about earlier today too had to do with that idea that we in Oklahoma, and I have a lot of friends, we talk a lot about the Oklahoma standard, and I think we do feel as Oklahomans, there's a strong sense, I've lived in a lot of different states in the union, and in Oklahoma, a lot of people are we're from Oklahoma. We eat black-eyed peas on January 1st. You know what I mean? We have shared culture. So many of us are, as much as we are diverse, we also are very similar in so many ways. So it's that both are true, that we are very beautifully diverse and that we're very same, and we have that shared Oklahoma culture. And so that idea of bringing our diversity and our sameness to the table, that it's very hopeful. Moving.
Oh, I agree. I mean, when you think about it, it's not been until these recent years that we've really had city folk. I mean, you think about that. Probably in the last maybe 10, 12 years that we've really had that city folk urban mentality, because we've all been kind of a rural mentality among our people. And we're just Oklahomans, we're just us, we don't put on airs, and we don't, we're not that type of people. We're just not that way. Even our celebrities and our superstars, that's just not the way they are. They're not that uppity. We've only had a few, we have our urbanites now who are probably think they're better than us rural people, but we don't have a lot of that, because even our urbanites are still kind of rural folk.
Representative Townley, I noticed we have a few other questions here on from Facebook Live that I want to be sure and get to. It says, okay, so many of our districts are non-competitive. There are no opponents or only opponents in the closed primary. So many voters end up not being able to elect their representative and senator and sheriff, etc. So could you kind of speak to the question of that, I suppose, that feeling that maybe, because when you do think about representative government, are you able to speak to that at all?
Well, now when you think about it though, like my county, this past election, I am a Republican. We've already established that. But my county, just this past election, got more Republican registered voters than Democrats. So what I'm saying though, what I'm trying to say in a not very eloquent way, is that we've got a lot of people crossing lines and voting opposite their party whenever it comes to the general election. Does that make sense? So whenever they don't get to vote in the primaries, I mean, all I can say is, you'd have to change your party to be able to do that. And I'm not sure what the general answer for that is, except, you're just going to have to try to get candidates to run, in your primaries so that you'll have that candidate to vote on. But other than that, I don't have the answer for that, because I mean, it's just whoever wants it, because it's a lot. It is a lot to give up, because someone said, well, this is just a part-time job. It's not a part-time job. You get paid. Well, we just got a pay raise, so it's no longer paid part-time, but in the past it's been paid part-time, and now it's at least paid a little bit better so that we can get, those everyday people, those people who might be giving up teacher jobs, those people who might be giving up blue collar worker jobs to actually come serve in the legislature. That's why it was actually the pay raise was given, because, we had a lot of people giving up, blue collar jobs to come serve in their legislature, and they can't go back to those jobs anymore because it's against the law to draw a state paycheck and serve in the legislature. That's me. That's what caught me. That's why I don't have a second job anymore, because I drew a government paycheck. And it was rough, but that is about the only way that you're going to be able to have that representation, is if you recruit candidates to run in your party.
I appreciate a lot about what you're saying too, that very idea, and which is why I started off by saying how appreciative I am of everybody who's here tonight, because the idea of caring enough to understand. I think this topic is, I think it's really, really difficult. I think it's difficult to understand representative government in a way, even though we think we understand, it's difficult to understand how important all of this is, and really how it does affect your day-to-day well-being and life. This is the nuts and bolts. We used the example earlier of saying that redistricting is kind of like, it's so foundational that it's kind of like if you play music, doing your scales. It's the importance of understanding your scales before you can ever go and play a full symphony piece. You have to do the scales first. And so really getting people to understand the importance of redistricting is one of the things that I want to take away from tonight's educational meeting, and to really excite people about what you're saying. And that's what I hear you saying, is we have to excite people about this process and get them on board.
Yes, and it starts with the census. And, and that is why whenever they push those census numbers, it's so, so important. And the thing to remember is, it's still, when it boils down to it, it's still a numbers game. There can be, I've got, like, say for myself, I'm going to have to pick up 2,000 voters, or population, not really voters. I've got to pick up 2,000 population for my census numbers. I mean, for my when I draw my line, that's a guesstimation based on July numbers. Okay. We don't have our final numbers yet, so keep that in mind, but 2,000. Okay. So we try to keep everything by a boundary, because, like, say the county line boundary, just if I can keep it like a county line boundary or a road boundary, one of my boundaries is a railroad. We've got the Burlington North America Railroad that goes through the Arbuckle Mountains. On the north side is Speaker McCall, and on the south side is me. So the boundary is something that simple. So we try to keep it that easy. So in my head, I'm going, okay, so what is the easiest boundary I can go to and pull out 2,000 people. I mean, people try to make this something really, really, really hard, like they're trying something nefarious, like we're going to go and, try to get a population center of more Republican voters. And here in my head, I'm just like, where can I go find an easy boundary to go draw into that I don't have to, find, okay, so I'm going to go to this mountain and find a good road to go to, or I'm going to go over to this road over here and find a good road to go to, because we have to keep it where it's a good boundary line, a physical boundary line also. So, I mean, there's all kinds of complications and things to think about with all of that when you think about your boundary lines too. So
it sounds like maybe it will be an amazing opportunity. When I do think of how much better this can be than what it was before, it's with the town halls, it sounds like it's an opportunity for you guys to get to know those constituents, current constituents, new constituents, 2,000 new constituents. It sounds like it's an opportunity for you guys to really get to know one another. And moving forward, that helps in so many ways of having communication back and forth and making our representative government work better for us. We've got several other questions here. A few people are asking for you to speak a little bit more about the cultural centers. When you talk about, when you were talking about the culture, somebody wants to know, is party affiliation a culture?
No, a party affiliation is not necessarily a culture, except they have kind of gathered that, like, and I say House District 99 because it is predominantly a Democrat culture down in there in that area. It is I want to say it's Hispanic. It is a Black culture in there. It's very artsy in that area, and that they have kind of designated as a more Democrat, because it is center. So they're kind of leaving that one alone, and they're not going to touch it. Hang on, somebody's sending me a text and it's messing up my little phone there. So they don't really consider that a culture, though. What would be considered the culture, though, would be, say, a Hispanic culture, a Chinatown, an Irish community that a German town. You have your little culture centers. I want to try to think. There is another little center here. I'm trying to think. I know there's another little culture center that's kind of ironic, like Prague. Prague has got the Czech community. They kind of keep that community as a whole, and I think their boundary goes around that community. If I'm not mistaken, their boundary goes around that community. It does not go through that culture of Prague because it's a Czech community. They go around the culture centers, whatever that culture might be.
Representative Townley, somebody's wanting to know, then who is it that's determining, like, who has determined that that's going to be the rule? Who has said leave the culture centers alone? Like
that is in law. That is in law. I want to say that is part of the that is just part of the process. Whenever that was just one of the things, whenever we started this process, they said we cannot mess with culture centers. So that is part of the redistricting law, that someone has come in whenever we whenever they did the lawsuits several years ago. Someone won a lawsuit and it says you cannot mess with a cultural center. And I'm not, now who determines that? I think it's pretty well determined by as a town, as a community where your culture centers are, where your culture centers lie. Like I have a Black community in my town. I would not be, I know that I could not go through and draw a line through that town. Well, number one, I wouldn't want to, because it's practically my hometown. So, I would never draw a line to that town, but it's a Black community. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, what I'm doing is writing down about the laws too, because even for myself to try to understand, I might have more questions than
yes, but
answers right now. So I'm writing down more questions.
Yeah, but
we have more questions coming in.
But they had a lawsuit. There was a lawsuit, and so the lawsuit, once it got settled, said you cannot divide culture centers.
The lawsuit, okay, you can.
Yeah, there was a lawsuit, and I obviously I don't have notes, so I can't tell you what lawsuit it was.
Some of the other questions then that are coming in on Facebook. Another aspect of gerrymandering is packing its citizens registered as one political party to dilute their influence in other districts. What are your thoughts regarding this aspect of gerrymandering?
I don't think I understand that question. Okay, so can you explain that question one more time?
Sure. It says, so I think what they're saying is, sometimes if you're not so strict about drawing a line, then you might have, for example, if you had all of your Democrats, like you were saying, in just one district, then you might have all these other districts that would go Republican, versus if you were to have a more, that idea of diluting right. So you have more Democrats that are represented over more districts, I guess, and as opposed to just, so I think that's what the question, because it says it's packing citizens registered as one political party to dilute their influence in others. So I guess to avoid diluting.
Well, the thing about it is that they would have had to have registered, because we're going off of this last presidential election. So they would have had to have registered last presidential election, right? So why would they have wanted to change their affiliation for the last presidential election? So to say that someone is going to change their affiliation to pack a district, because see, now we're not going to look at anybody's voter ID except for what they were registered in November. So whatever they were registered in for the last presidential election, and most everyone, whenever they register for a presidential election, they're going to be registering whatever they vote. I can't imagine why. I guess I can't imagine why anybody would change their voter registration for a presidential election.
Well, I don't know if they were actually saying changing their voter registration.
Oh, you're saying to draw a line to where there's. Oh, I see what you're saying.
In other words, that was part of the unfairness. That's what.
Well, now that might happen. I'm not going to say that might not happen, but whenever I think about the population centers, I would say that there would have to be a lot. The only way that would happen is if there was just a lot of population in that area and they needed to pick up that area and it just happened to be that way. But I'm trying to think of how that would work.
Because maybe that'll be one of the questions we can come to the table with together.
Yeah, because I'm thinking logically, numbers wise, I don't see how that would work numbers wise. Because if you're needing to pick up numbers and you've got a certain amount right here, I can't see how you would be able to. I mean, they would really have to have a lot of numbers, or I don't know. I'm trying to think in my head how you could draw a line to make that happen.
Maybe it'll be helpful to look at it historically and how that has happened historically.
Right.
Maybe that would be one of the things as we come to the table to say, this is what's happened that's been unfair in the past. This is how they have suppressed votes in the past. This is how they've caused certain people in the past to feel as though their voices don't matter, to feel as though they don't have a voice or a vote or a place at the table. We want to be better regarding that. So maybe moving forward, for us to understand what's happened historically with gerrymandering, and like you're saying, in other parts of the country too, where maybe it was
Right.
even worse than in Oklahoma. But for us to look across time and place and to see the injustice for what it is and to call the injustice for what it is and to know that we as Oklahomans can do better, can be better, can be fairer. And that's the exciting part of coming to the table in coalition as independents, as Democrats, and as Republicans, and being better in the future.
And the main thing is that we are having all of these meetings across the state, and to make sure that everybody gets the knowledge and the word out.
Thank you.
Get to your meetings. We have advertised these meetings in newspapers, in the newspapers and Facebook, different medias. Get to your meetings. If you want a voice, get to your meetings, be heard, because we've made all of this open. We're not trying to hide.
For saying that. And you and I are both so flawed, and so we are both so flawed and have such a limited understanding of ourselves of what the best vision can be. Our best vision, and that vision, that synergy, that win-win solution is going to come when many people who know more than we know about this situation come to the table and draw these lines. And I'm so grateful, the League friends and people not politicians and the Congress people who know more than even you and I know will be a part of that voice, and our next door neighbors. You know, we can ask our neighbors, and we do have some more questions, Representative. I will tell
you that we have opened it up. If anyone wants to draw a map of the redistricting, anyone can draw the map. However, the caveat is you can't just draw your district map. When you draw the map, you have to take on the entire state. Like, you can draw just House districts, and that's okay. But you have to draw 101 House districts fairly and equitably by the numbers across the board. And we're allowing anybody who wants to do that. But you can't just pick, like, okay, so I'm District 48. I can't just say, okay, well, this is District 48 and this is what I want done. You can't just do that. You have to draw all 101 House districts, because whenever you start messing with one House district, it affects the next House district and the next House district and the next House district. And it's like a little house of cards or a domino effect, and all of them get effect. And we can't end up with having more people in, like, say the 40,000 that we have over in Deer Creek area. Well, we can't leave all those 40,000 people in Deer Creek area. We have to spread them out into different districts. So, that's
what you're saying. This kind of goes along with this next question: is when these maps are drawn, will the public be able to see the new proposed maps before they're presented to committee? And if so, how will they be able to see them?
That I honestly cannot answer that question. I can find that out, and I can text Roxanne and let you know.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Because
I don't know. I actually have not answered that. I'm sure they'll be open for public viewing, though. I can't imagine them not being, because everybody's on the committee is going to get it. So even our Democrat counterparts are going to get the map. So I can't see that they won't be open for public viewing.
Because a follow-up question has to do with how is all of that weighted? Will the maps that are drawn by the individuals who are submitting carry the same weight as the legislators who are drawing the maps? Will it all be weighted the same?
Absolutely. If you've got a better vote, then we're all game. Because honestly, the way I look at it is we're going to have to most likely pick up a seat. And it'll be an outgoing legislator, someone who's retiring. I don't know who it is, so don't start saying, oh, she's going to go after Tommy Harden's seat, who happens to be below me. We're going to pick up his seat and move it somewhere. Yeah, we're not doing that. He's got way too many people. But we're probably going to have to pick up a seat somewhere and move it to the Oklahoma City area somewhere and redistrict around it, because we have got a monster population in Oklahoma City that has to be redistricted. I don't know of any other way to do it. I mean, that's just an idea. Keep in mind, these are all ideas that are just being thrown around. But right now we've got a massive population explosion in Oklahoma City that we have to address.
We have,
and that's the only way. We can only have 101 districts constitutionally. So
it'll be exciting to see what all of this is going to look like. It is very exciting, I can tell from all the questions we're getting in.
It's cool to think about, but again, it's a numbers game. I mean, we don't get to make up this stuff. There's a law.
It says what, and we actually had the legislators who met with us previously weighed in on this. What do you then see as an advantage of having that nonpartisan, neutral citizen commission to draw the district lines? Because we did have some of the legislators weigh in and say, in 10 years, absolutely, they think that's what we want to move toward.
Right. Well, I mean, personally, I've not ever seen the problem that we've had in Oklahoma. I can see it in probably some other states, but I can see that, say once we get the lines drawn and we get things going, if there needs to be a check, then, we're going to have those committee members who come back and say, this is not right. You're cutting into an area that they need to stay intact. And they know that population center, they know their area, and they know that population center needs to stay intact, or maybe they know that that's a predominantly Democrat area and they want to keep it intact. Even though we don't count Democrats as a cultural center, but they're saying, it's important that you don't come through this area like that. And they can say you're gerrymandering. They can basically call us on the carpet, and that's okay. They get that voice, and that's why we have everyone on the committee, because everyone gets that voice. Everyone has a right to give their opinion, to give their comments. And hopefully constituents will come to these meetings and give their voice and say, hey, we've got this area. It's important to us to keep this area together. There's a historic area here in Oklahoma City. They feel like they should be together. I don't see that they're really a culture center, but they feel like they're a culture center. So it should be, do we recognize that a culture center? Depends on where their line draws.
Do you see any disadvantages? They're asking the question too, then about the disadvantages of it being where it would move away. I know that Senator Pittman had spoken to that too. She was talking about how strongly she feels about, and it was really kind of moving hearing her talk about how much she cares about her home and her neighborhood and her district.
And she's the District 99. I mean, we're not messing with her district either. I mean, and it's one of those that we're not going to mess with it either, because they're very passionate about it.
Right.
And so yeah.
So that would be, so she had sort of weighed in on that. And then I think it was Senator Brooks who had said though that he could actually see so they sort of even saw things a little differently. So it has been exciting talking to people and seeing how they feel differently about those advantages and disadvantages to that question. Yeah. There was another question about the software. To what degree does the software used by the legislatures influence the final lines?
Actually, the software is very, it's pretty cut and dried. It just says this is kind of the numbers that we're looking at. This is what we want to, it really kind of keeps the first thing we do with the software is it's a numbers. It says, this is the numbers we want to look at. This is the numbers we want to see it as. And it tries to get it as close as we can. And then if we have to, tweak the lines, then we say, okay, we might want to, and keep in mind, I'm trying so hard not to point out any particular race or anything, but like if we have again, I have an all Black community, and I was the first white child to go to school in this all Black community. So keep in mind, I am not going anywhere bad or different, but I'm just saying this all Black community say, we might want to say we want to avoid going through any community that we know is an all Black community or an all Black neighborhood. So, we can put that parameter in there and say we want to avoid that. And that can be done. Because it does have a way to look at the race and everything of the voter.
Somebody had weighed in on that, what you're saying, said if you split up these cultural communities, sometimes you could end up with 2 impactful districts instead of just 1. And that does sound powerful.
Yes, but we can also bring lawsuits when that happens. And so I'm not, I agree, that would be a great thing, but some don't want they don't want that broken up, and then we are going to have a lawsuit on our hands. So the community would have to agree to it. Does that make sense? I mean, they would just have to.
So again, the beauty of the town halls and bringing people in. I mean, again, you're really underscoring, I think, for me, the importance of getting the word out, educating people, come to these town halls. The question had come up about how we can do more and more virtually. I know we're going to let people know where they can go to get to be a part of one of these town halls and let his and her voice be heard. But what about more virtual opportunities too for weighing in or help?
Right. I know that we have one, and I'm so sorry. I do not know when it is, but I'll find out the date. We have one more virtual town hall meeting that's coming up, and I'll let Roxanne know when it is. It's coming up here very, very soon. And I'm not saying that we can't have more and more virtual in the future years, but this year we've had 2. We just had one just here recently, and then we're going to have one more. And then all of the town hall meetings that we'll have will be like Facebook Live, but you won't be able to ask questions back. You'll just be able to watch. So, but yes, virtual is it's a wonderful thing. And that's maybe the beauty part of COVID, is that we're all learning that we can survive by, virtual reality, and we can, see things. Zoom's a wonderful thing.
I agree. Thank you.
It's opened the door to so much.
You've also mentioned, sharing some of this information with us after the fact, because people are also wondering about more information on drawing and submitting the district maps. But would that also be something? And I know that we're providing on our webpage. You can go to the leagueofwomenvoters.org and you can see all of this information too. But would that be? Do you know offhand where to submit?
Where they would submit? They would submit it to the redistricting committee at the Capitol.
Redistricting committee at the Capitol.
Yes, and the 2200 Lincoln Boulevard, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73105. Almost gave you the Ardmore zip code. That would not work.
Let's see. There's so many good questions.
Well, y'all are going to have to let me just go off 1 second, because I'm supposed to be in at dinner at 7:30, because we were only going to be on here for an hour. So hang on.
And we've had,
because I was told we were going to be on here for an hour. So let me tell my dinner dates that I may be just a little longer. Hang on. I am so sorry. Okay, I'm back. I just told him, I was like, if you order me food, I will come pay in a minute.
Maybe we'll try one all-time question. You've given us wonderful opportunities for, I think, more questions. And based on the number of questions that I'm seeing here, I get a sense that you've done a beautiful job of inspiring people to get to the table, to get to the town halls, to call their neighbors and to say,
Yes.
Let's show up, let's help. We have an opportunity to just really make a big difference in Oklahoma. And thank you for that as much as anything. That
well, I hope so. And I hope everyone will get involved, because I mean, it's a wonderful process. I mean, it's something I've always, read about, heard about, and been interested in, but then to actually do it, it's kind of amazing. It's kind of amazing to, look at all the numbers and to look at all the process and to think, there's actually 3 little areas in Oklahoma City alone, and maybe one little area in Tulsa that's absolutely going to make everything topsy-turvy in all the rest of our rural areas. And it's going to push all the rest of the numbers or all the rest of the districts, and that's what makes everything change. That is what's
changing as a state.
That's going to be those population centers is what's going to make everything, all the other districts move. And you're thinking, well, why did that move? Why did we have to do it? Why did we have to change? Well, because somebody else had a population growth and we can't stay the same because they grew.
Representative Townley, I am pleased to announce too that we have heard from our League of Women Voters Administrative Assistant Jackie Finley has said that you can go to oklahomahouse.gov, and she's let us know that the virtual meeting that you were talking about is January 25th, according to that website. So all of your good information is you can get at oklahomahouse.gov as well as at our league website. And
good deal.
And then the all-time question, because we've had them ask in all caps, please ask this question, and that can maybe be our send-off. Once the map has been drawn, will there be an opportunity for people to challenge the districts if they feel they need to challenge prior to them being set in stone? Will there be challenge period?
Yes, there's always a challenge period, and that's, lawsuits, challenge periods, always available to be done.
It's so hopeful. Everything that you've talked about has really, I think it has absolutely inspired folks to get involved. Yeah. And I loved when you said, that idea too, that inspiring people to run and to raise voices. And so thank you so much for that.
And y'all didn't tell me I was following AJ, because she's kind of a little dynamo in a little package.
Have such a wonderful, and it's been part of what's wonderful about being involved in the league. We always encourage league involvement too for folks, because, come on out and join us, because it's been a wonderful opportunity to meet all of our wonderful legislators, candidates who are running, the constituents, the next door neighbors. It is about relationship and creating amazing relationships and making I think that's what makes representative democracy so amazing. It's just great relationships. And so I thank you for being a part of it.
I hope I answered your questions and at least made you understand it a little bit better. And if anybody can email me, tammy.townley@okhouse.gov, and I will, if I don't have the answer, I will get you the answer.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you very much, and enjoy your dinner. Enjoy.
Thanks. All right, y'all. Take care.
Take care. Take care, everybody. Thank you. Thank you all.